Hello. Hello and welcome to the Major Arcana Part 2. So this is going to be the kind of the nitty-gritty going through each of the cards one by one. Last time I kind of talked a little bit about the history and the context of tarot because I thought it was a good time to bring it up. So yes, so go ahead, and if you have questions, you can put them in the chat about the Major Arcana, or anything about tarot is fine. You can put it in the chat. So let me post that in the chat right now. Okay, all right. So it looks like there's one person here. It's been a busy June. It's been tough to schedule. There's always something going on, like today's Father's Day. So happy Father's Day. Last week was my son's graduation party, so I didn't do the show or the class then. And then the way the original schedule is I would have been on the 9th and the 23rd, and then I've got stuff on the 23rd, so I shifted to today and the 30th, not realizing today is Father's Day, but I don't know. There's one person here, so welcome one person who is here. Of course, you can always watch the replay. I'm drinking hibiscus tea today. Very nice because it's hot. It's hot here. It still hasn't been that hot, but it's getting there. Quite the weird year. A lot of rain. A lot. I mean, like sometimes we have rainy years, but this is a lot of rain. I got, and I'm just kind of just chatting to kill time as people show up. I got this really cool Aquarian tarot deck. It's a mini deck. It's a mini because I wanted to start doing like kind of bigger spread readings as videos. And when you have large tarot cards, it's difficult to do that. So I got this really neat. I don't know if I ever owned the Aquarian, but I know I have seen the images before. And when I got it, I was like, oh, I forgot how much I like this deck. So it's kind of neat. It's kind of Art Deco. And then as you can see, these cards are kind of mini for tarot cards. Not for regular cards. These are like the size of regular playing cards, which in the world of tarot is mini. And I had a hard time finding a mini tarot deck. All I could find was Rider-Waite, and I was like, I don't want Rider-Waite. I want something else. And so finally I found these. Oh gosh, I forget the name of the site now. It was in the UK, but I did get free shipping. So, but I just had to wait a little longer for them. Gosh, I can't remember what it was called. It was like called the Book Library or something. It's like a simple name. I found it online. Like I asked on some online tarot group. Somebody turned me on to that. And then I also, I was, when I was looking for mini tarot decks, I found these free, and I can send out the link if you're interested. You can print these for free, and they're really nice. I mean, the art on them is really good, and the quality is really good when you print them. And I just printed it on like some cardstock kind of stuff. So they're really cool. They're a little too small. I mean, look, compared to like the size of my eye, that's how big this is. So it's like, this is maybe a little too mini. So the Aquarian is much better, but I'll send out the link if anybody wants the link to this one. And then lastly, I think maybe the video quality is a little better because the internet service provider came out and changed out our modem, and I tested it, and I do have better upload speeds. So I'm looking at, I can see myself over here. It does look better because I mean before the video was so blurry, it was awful. I was just really not happy. So I think it's better. I don't know. You can tell me in the chat if you think it looks any better or not. I don't know. But anyway, let me X out this little message from Google here. And eventually this Hangouts format is going away, so I'm going to have to like upgrade my computer so I can use live streaming software, because I like to do the presentations. If I didn't like to do the presentations, it would be fine just to use the live broadcast thing they have on YouTube, but I like the presentations. So anyway, oh yes, Julia says, please send the link. I will send the link. If I don't post it here in the chat, then it'll be on the Facebook page, or I'll send it out with the homework. So if you're not on the Facebook page and you haven't signed up for the email list, you might want to do that, because that's how I'm going to send out the link. And I'll post that link here in a minute. But let me get to the presentation, and then I can post that link for you. So we're talking about the Major Arcana. If you have questions, post them in the chat. And this should be a little more down-to-earth, practical, brass tacks as compared to the last presentation on the Major Arcana. So let me share my screen. Okay, hopefully everybody can see my screen now. Okay, and let me post. This is the link to sign up for the email list if you need to do that, or you want to do that. All right, there is the link. Okay, so let's talk about the Major Arcana. Okay, welcome to the Major Arcana. So this is the Zultun Tarot, which is like a Mayan version of tarot. But I just like how all their Major Arcana cards make a mural. Like they fit together like a puzzle, and they make a mural. So I just took a picture of that because I thought that was cool, and I put it here. So for those of you who are like super newbies and don't know anything, there are 22 Major Arcana cards, starting with the Fool, which is up here, and ending with the World, which is down here. But we're gonna talk about it more as we go. So one of the ways to think about the Major Arcana is like, okay, it's like the cast of characters in a play or in a movie. Like, you know, you have certain characters. The Major Arcana, they're often you often hear the word archetype associated with the Major Arcana. So that's that same kind of idea, that it's like the quintessential whatever. So it's like we have cards like the Empress, which like have to do with like motherhood and creativity. So it's like we have an idea of like, if somebody says like this appeals to the mother in you or whatever, you know what that means, because it's like we have an idea of what a mother is and what the quintessential mother is and what the quintessential mother is not. And, you know, so somebody's like playing the mother character, right? So that's kind of the idea behind the Major Arcana. Another idea behind the Major Arcana is also like, it's like life lessons or kind of like universal laws. So like they, you know, it's like, you know how like we used to tell stories and we used to tell fables, and like these fables had a moral, right? So the moral is like, you know, don't go running off half cocked. Like that's the moral of the fable. Well, like tarot, the Major Arcana brings like those kind of lessons. Like, yeah, like, you know, don't go running off half cocked, or, you know, I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but like those kind of things. So those are the kind of things that we're talking about with the Major Arcana. So that can be kind of a lot to, I don't know, to conceive of. And that's why I started with suits, and then I started with the pip cards, because I think it's a little more concrete when you start that way, and then you can kind of expand out into the Major Arcana. So the very first card is the card 0, which is the Fool. So the Fool is everywhere and nowhere. It's like the life spirit. It's kind of like your soul. So that's, you know, that's what that energy is. So like the Fool is very innocent, The Fool just shows up and goes into things, and doesn't really have any expectations or anything. It's just, in a way, it's kind of the Fool is kind of a wanderer or a vagabond, but it's symbolic of your pure essential spiritual nature, or your spirit, who is just on this earth having experiences, having earthly experiences. You're a spiritual being having earthly experiences. That's the Fool. And so you can kind of like go through your deck, and everybody's deck's going to be a little bit different and emphasize a little different things. But you can go through and you can kind of go, oh, like there's certain categories of cards. So this is one way you can look at it. Like, okay, there's the world around us is represented in the Major Arcana. We have the sun, the moon, the star, the world, right? This is the world around us. The sun shines above us in the day, and the moon shines above us at night. We have stars at night, and we live in the world. And if you saw the last presentation from last week, I talked about the Minciati Tarot, which has, like, I can't even remember how many cards now. It has a bunch of extra Major Arcana cards. So it had like a lot of other stuff. So just kind of keep that in mind. Like, there were different tarot decks that had different things, and they had different elements. So it's like you could even expand some of that world around us, or you could imagine some of the other cards that might have been in the deck at one time. There are men and women. So on the top row here, I have the High Priestess, the Empress, Strength, Justice. This actually kind of looks like a guy, but in most decks, Justice is a woman. That's why I put it here. We have the Star, we have the World. These are all women. And then we have the men. We have the Hierophant, the Magician, the Emperor, the Chariot, the Hermit, the Hangman. So we can just notice, like, hey, there's men and women in there. And then, we also see the sun and the stars and all these other things, elements in these cards too. I'm just popping in to see if anybody's saying anything. No one's saying anything. Okay. All right. So moving on. We have cards which I call like the life happens cards. So we have death, because yes, everybody dies. Things come to an end. Other people die. So we have the death card. These are things that happen when you're incarnate on this earth. We have the Wheel of Fortune. So the Wheel of Fortune is kind of like the fickle finger of fate. Things just happen suddenly. They come out of the blue. They come out of nowhere. It's like, good things happen, bad things happen. Things happen. That's kind of Wheel of Fortune is kind of like shit happens. Life happens. We have the Tower. Like, things get destroyed. Things break down. We have the Lovers. We fall in love. We have relationships. We have to make choices. We have Justice, where, it's like very concretely, like, we go to court. We have to settle things. We have to, like, go before a judge sometimes. Some people get married before a judge. Some people get divorced before a judge. Maybe you got a parking ticket and you have to appear before the judge, or, anything like that. That's part of things that happen in this life. There are also Christian themes in the Major Arcana. And then once again, like if you saw the video from last week, the Minciati Tarot has more of these Christian virtues in them, like the full set of the 7 virtues. But this is what we have left. We have Strength, Justice, Temperance. And there's hope and charity are in the Minciati Tarot, but they're not in the tarot that we have now. But we still do have those Christian virtues of strength, justice, and temperance. And then, of course, we have the devil himself. He's in there, but God is not in the tarot. I guess he's everywhere, so he doesn't need to be a character, but we do have the devil. And we have Temperance, who is kind of like an angel. So we have like devils and angels. And then there's also an angel that shows up in the last Judgment card. So these are things just to kind of, like I said, put in perspective, put in context, kind of think about these things and be like, oh, okay, like what? So if there's all this kind of Christian symbolism and Christian themes, Like, how am I going to deal with that? Or like, especially if you're not religious or whatever yourself, like, how do you want to approach that? Do you want to just kind of learn a little bit about it and maybe use it, or just ignore it and come up with your own thing? Because I mean, you're perfectly fine to do that. I just wanted to point out, kind of like, this is a category of cards that are there. So there are things that could be considered scary. Like these are the kind of cards that like scare people that are not used to the tarot. That's why sometimes, like, that's why I like the Gaian deck, because like there's really no scary cards in there. So if you're dealing with people that have never had readings or whatever, like the Gaian's good because there's nothing scary in there. But there are, other decks emphasize some of the scary stuff more. Some decks make even not scary cards look scary. You may have noticed that, but I'm just saying, just kind of in general, like, people don't really like the death card. They don't really like the devil card. They're not too thrilled. The moon can look kind of scary. Like this moon card, like the moon looks a little angry, and it's weird because there's these dogs or wolves or something out, and this crayfish, it might look a little creepy. Maybe it doesn't look creepy to you. The Judgment card, which I didn't put on here, like that looks scary to some people because you have people coming up out of the graves, and like we think, in our day, like this is where I'm saying, this is where context comes in. Back when that card was put in the deck, that was probably actually a pretty good card. Like people probably liked Judgment, because they're like, oh, it's the last judgment and I'm going to be freed and I'm going to go to heaven and I'm going to be resurrected and all this. But when we look at it now, it looks like, okay, these weird people coming up out of the ground, like, are they zombies? Like, what's going on here? I'm just saying, like, that might be a scary card to you, might be a scary card to other people. I don't know, but I'm just saying you might want to like make some observations. Then there are happy cards, like, the Empress, like that. I don't know, but like I said, some decks can make anything look scary, but the Empress, that's a good card. The Sun is a good card. Lovers, usually good cards. Not one of my personal favorites, but most people would probably like to see the Lovers come up. And once again, kind of talking about these themes and how things change. With this Lovers card that I put in here, this is kind of more like the Adam and Eve kind of thing. You see, you got the snake over here. And so, like, that's why to me, I'm like, well, I don't know if that's such a great card. It's kind of like, this is where they're going to like fall and go out of the garden, like make a mistake and get kicked out of the garden. I don't know if that's great. But, in more modern decks, there's more like you actually see Lovers on the card, and it's like a better card. So these are just things to think about. You might want to take your own deck and separate them out. However they seem to you, be like, oh, I like these cards. I would be happy if these cards showed up. And I kind of don't like these cards. They don't look so good. And these cards, like, I really don't know what the heck is going on in these cards. I'm really confused by them or whatever, and just start playing with like different symbolism, or like, these cards all have the sun in them. These cards all have little kids in them. And these cards all have whatever, you can do stuff like that just to kind of start to familiarize yourself and start, making associations. Okay. So I'm going to pop over and look at the chat. Yep. No, does anybody have any questions so far? Questions. All right. I'm going to still look at the chat and go on here. Okay. So once again, and I made this point in the last presentation, that's why I went through the whole history of it, to make the point that there is no true tarot. So you need to release yourself from that right now. So don't think like, oh, this is not, like, if I interpret this card this way, like, that's wrong. No, there is no true tarot. Like, the tarot has changed a bunch of times. It used to have, some of the decks had lots of cards, some of them had less, some of them swapped, this card for that card, you know what I mean? And then all this esoteric stuff that we now associate with the tarot was added in the 1800s. So, even before that, like, all this other stuff didn't exist. There was a whole big occult movement in France and other places that like put all this occult teachings. They layered it on the tarot, and it was never there before. So that's what I'm saying. I just want you to just free yourself right now from thinking that there is some true and right way to read tarot, because there isn't. So you just need to find out what works for you. And then as I always say too, I'm not putting down all those layers of significance and occult knowledge and all that. I'm not. Go ahead and go explore that. But if you want to start reading quickly, you need to just make your own associations, kind of get a good feel for what's going on. And then you can explore that other stuff all you want and see where it takes you. So, moving on. Okay, yes. And then this is also just like a word of advice. It's called keep it simple. Less is more. So, in the beginning, you're only going to have a few like delineations, just a couple for each card. And so don't stress over that. Just use it, and it'll grow. Less is more. I mean, you don't want to be throwing a bunch of stuff out at a client, or you don't want to be throwing a bunch of stuff up in your head, and then you're like, I don't know. It's like all these different possibilities. I don't know which it is. If you only have a couple, then it's just easier because you only have a couple. And also, the more gyrations you have to do to like get some kind of interpretation to fit, like I said, you'll come across these different interpretations, a lot of them that were layered on in the 1800s. Like, the more gyrations you have to do in your mind to make it fit or make it work, the less useful that is. You may, maybe 20 years later, it'll finally dawn on you like, oh, I get it now. But if you're having to like do all kinds of crazy logic or matching up in your head to get it to work, just drop it. Just because it's going to just muck up your interpretation, and it's not helpful. And lastly, it's okay to be wrong. So it's like, you got to kind of like, when you're reading for somebody, kind of throw it out there. And if they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, it's like you can either try to explore it and figure it out, or just move on and be like, well, we can come back to that. I'm not sure. This is how I'm seeing it now. And just be like, okay, and then just move on. All right. So I had a bunch of people sent in cards they wanted to know about. And so we're going to go through the cards that people want to know about. And if you have one that you want to know about, you can put it in the chat. And if I don't cover it or whatever, because this is not all of them, but I kind of like to keep these presentations to about an hour. So that's why I have whatever I have. And then if we have time for more, we can definitely do more. But these are the ones that I got questions about. So we have the Hierophant. Okay, so the Hierophant is number 5. This is about social hierarchies. So if you think about what a Hierophant is he's like a pope. That's another name for the Hierophant, is the pope. So it's like he is a person of high standing inside the Catholic Church, which has a set hierarchy. It's like you have priests and you have bishops and you have whatever. There's a whole social system of how you eventually get to be pope, which is like the super head guy, right? So that's one thing. And that's how you can approach all these cards. We think about, okay, what is this thing? What is this thing? Okay, it is a pope. He is like the head of the Catholic Church. He is a religious leader. He holds a specific office that he got to through a set of actions or whatever you have to do to become pope. So like I had that as a bullet point, a set approach. The Hierophant also has to do with teachers and mentors, so like teachers and learning, teachers and students and teachers. It's the rules of the group or playing the game. You know what I mean? So it's like being pope is kind of political. Like, so you have to play a certain game in order to be pope. Like, you don't just like do your own thing and whatever, and do mass your own way and all that kind of stuff, and then expect to be Pope, like, because that's probably not going to work. And so then on the opposite side, you always have to think about like the opposite side. Okay, so what's the opposite side? The opposite side is the iconoclast. So that's the person that comes in and says, nope, this system is not, it's not right, it's not working, and I'm gonna expose it for what it is, and I'm gonna go against it, and and do my own thing. And that's the iconoclast. So with this, this Hierophant and all these ideas I've been talking about, like, okay, what does it mean? How does it work? What do I keep? What do I throw away? And somebody asked this question is, okay, so like the Hierophant is number 5. So that means all the 5 pip cards are related to this Major Arcana card. So if you didn't know that, that's another way to kind of work with the meaning. So like the High Priestess is number 2. So all of the 2 cards are related to the High Priestess in some way. And then like all the 10 cards are related to the Wheel of Fortune in some way. Okay. So this person asked, they're like, okay, like I totally don't get it, because like the Hierophant is like the Pope. He's like this guy, he's this leader or whatever. And it's actually kind of a stable thing. And then, but all the 5s are about the 5 is like an upset. The 5 is a disturbance. The 5 is change, so it's like, doesn't make sense. And it's like, well, sometimes it doesn't make sense. And so if it doesn't make sense that the 5 cards relate to the Pope, then just be okay with that. Be like, yeah, in most cases they work, like the 7s and with the Chariot and the other 7 cards, like they fit together. But when it comes to the 5, doesn't fit, doesn't make sense, and just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. It doesn't have to make sense. Like the Golden Dawn association with the Pope, number 5, is Taurus. So, I mean, there's ways you can kind of get that to fit, and ways that it kind of doesn't fit. So, just do with that whatever you want to do. But it's like, don't get all hung up like it's got to fit. It's got to, like, how is it Taurus? Because it's really not very Taurus. There's not too much Taurus in it, I don't think. But it might make sense to you. And if it makes sense to you, like, that's great. That's great. Okay, so that's the Pope, that's the Hierophant. All right. So another one that people asked about was Temperance. So that was, once again, that's the angel. In this slide, I just kind of emphasized the feet in the water thing. And so, like I said, just by making observations of the card itself, there's an angel on the card. So maybe that card has something to do with angelic presence or angelic intervention. Like it could, since there's an angel on the card. It could be the Temperance is usually about healing or the need for healing. So kind of playing off that idea of the angelic presence, a lot of times there's like miracle healings. Like that's when angels show up, is when there's miracle healings. So then, okay, so then we kind of got healing happening in the card. On the card, which is not pictured here, usually you have an angel that's like pouring water or something between 2 cups. So it's like you have that idea of like going with the flow and combining things in new and interesting ways, which has to do like with the alchemy. Like it's like we have these elements and we're going to combine them, and it's going to turn into something else, something greater than it was before. And then we have like this whole idea, like that Christian virtue of temperance, which has to do with moderation. So that's what I'm saying about the Major Arcana, is like, it's going to take a little meditation time on your part to kind of like be like, oh, okay, I kind of like get this card, you know. So I would advise you to like sit with the card and, like I say, look at it, study it. You can look up some definitions and, you know, just kind of think on it, write in your journal, see what you're getting from it. Like, how does this card make you feel? Like, what do you think about when you look at the card? Does it remind you of something? Does a song come up in your head? Do you think of a movie? Do you think of somebody you know? Do you flash back to a situation? You know, so that's why I'm saying you got to kind of like, you got to kind of sit with this a little bit to kind of come up with something. Next, we have the Magician. Somebody asked about the Magician. So, you know, the Magician is a magician, and you can do magic. Like, I was like, okay, you can do magic. The Magician is about the creative force of the universe. It's like the yang male energy. It's the will. So like one of the phrases that comes to me around this card is, in the beginning was the word. And so this is, you know, and then this is a doing card. Whereas like the High Priestess is the female receptive energy. So this is like kind of like receiving and reflecting on things. And the Magician is doing things and creating things. So, you know, once again, you can kind of like sit with this, like with this idea of like magicians and how they do what they do and what are they really doing and what's the point of a magician and why do we like magician? You know what I mean? You can just kind of sit with that and be like, okay, so if this card like came up, like what is it trying to tell me or whoever I'm reading for? So it might, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's pointing to that active male energy, you know, and using the will, you know. So like, is in the reading, does it look like somebody's using their will, or they need to use their will, or they've forgotten how to use their will, or what, you know, what, and you'll see by the other cards, but this is, you know, this is kind of the general idea. We have Justice. And so I talked about that a little bit. Very often, very literal. If you ask people if there's any kind of court case, legal issue, something, divorce, whatever, I'm telling you, most of the time there will be. So that's the thing about the cards is like, and I pointed this out too, is they can be very literal at times. So don't pass over that thinking that it has to be something else, because it could be something very concrete, like there is a legal issue here that needs to be resolved. And so like what is legal issues? Why do we go to court? You know, is because we want to determine right versus wrong. We want justice. We want a third party to get involved and go, okay, in this situation, you know, it's like Judge Judy or whatever. The people go into the court and they go, Judge Judy, I loaned this person money. And the other person says, yeah, but you said I didn't have to pay it back. And everybody gives their side. And then the judge, you know, weighs things out and makes a judgment and says, okay, you know, I really think this person knew that they needed to pay you back and they're not paying you back. Or I don't think it was really clear that they needed to pay you back, or whatever. That's what you go to court about. That's why you go before a judge. So, you know, you can extrapolate that out. If it's not something that's concretely about court, then it could be about, okay, like what's coming up in your life where you're trying to decide right from wrong. You know, what would you do? This is what I ask people a lot of times. What would you do if no one was going to judge you for it? So it's like you're trying to make a decision or trying to pick a path. Well, what would you do if you didn't feel like you were going to be judged? Because that's probably like they're trying to weigh something out. They're trying to like, oh, should I do this? Should I not do this? It's like, I really want to do this, but I think these other people over here are going to go, oh, well, you're just being this way. And you're being selfish and you're being whatever. And I don't think you should do, you know what I mean? So how would it look to other, it's like, so it's like, how are you going to weigh out the right and wrong and what's more important and all that kind of stuff. And then I guess I didn't put it in here. I think I was going to put it in here, but I didn't do it. Oh, like that was with Judgment. That was a different card, I think. But there's the idea of, and this is where it's like you can, once you start, chewing on these cards, so to speak, then you'll start seeing like these universal principles that like, oh yeah, wait, I've heard of that, So like in in Egypt, they have the idea of the weighing of the heart, right? After you die, then it's like they your heart gets weighed against a feather. And then it's like if it's lighter than a feather, then you can pass to the next life. If not, you get trapped wherever you get trapped. So you start going, oh, these really are universal, and this is how they're universal. Like it's been portrayed this way, and it's been portrayed that way, in different times, in different cultures, in stories, in fables, in plays, or whatever. You start seeing these. I brought it up it was in the last class where it's like, you have, when you're in English class, it's like you talk about these themes like man versus nature and gosh, I'm blanking out. I can't think of any of the other ones, but you have these themes like the underdog rising up despite the odds, you know what I mean? You have all these universal themes, and that's what all our stories are built around, because they're universal themes, and we keep telling the same stories over and over and over and over again. So that's what these major arcana cards are, is they're speaking to little pieces of these themes. So it's like, if you can kind of pick them out, this is kind of like the overarching themes and lessons and stuff that are coming up in the situation. All right, so we have Wheel of Fortune. Okay, so people have asked about the Wheel of Fortune. So this is the fickle finger of fate. This is the ups and downs of life. Is like you have good things happen, you have bad things happen. That's life. Things happen in cycles, things repeat. This is about being too optimistic or too pessimistic. So it's like kind of like the general idea is kind of like the ups and downs of life. So like the extremes of that would be like, oh, you're being way too optimistic, or you're being way too pessimistic, because it's like the give and take of life. It's not one-sided like that. Everything changes, everything's moving, everything's, what comes up must come down. Right? There's so many, like I said, once you start digging into there, you're like, there'll be all these phrases and sayings, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's definitely a universal concept. What goes up must come down, right? The Wheel of Fortune can also act as kind of a wild card in a situation. It's like, woo, I don't know, we're spin the wheel, see what happens. And a lot of times, one of the things I will say to people, like if I feel like they're too stuck and they're not getting out into they're not taking any chances or whatever, it's like, you can't win if you don't play. Like, you're not going to win if you don't play. And that was a phrase from a commercial for lottery tickets. So it's like, you can't win if you don't play. So, and then I wanted to tell you guys that this is an example of like how a story or a fable can fit a tarot card. And so this is the kind of stuff you need to be like I said, chewing on and looking for and keeping your ears open, and you'll come across stuff like this. So this, let me see if I can get it to open. Is it opening? Oh my gosh, I don't know what it's doing. Oh, here it goes. It's going. So this is a little story that fits the Wheel of Fortune. It's called The Fable of the Horse. There is a story of a Chinese farmer and the son that I love. It reminds me to be mindful and grateful for all situations. Okay, so a farmer had only one horse. One day his horse ran away. His neighbor said, "I'm so sorry. This is such bad news. You must be so upset." The man said, "We'll see." A few days later, the horse came back with 20 wild horses following. The man and his son corralled all 21 horses. The neighbor said, "Congratulations. This is such great news. You must be so happy." The man just said, "We'll see." One of the wild horses kicked the man's only son, breaking both his legs. His neighbor said, "I'm sorry. This is such bad news. You must be so upset." The man just said, "We'll see." The country went to war, and every able bodied young man was drafted to fight. The war was terrible and killed every young man, but the farmer's son was spared, since his broken legs prevented him from being drafted. His neighbor said, "Congratulations, this is such good news. You must be so happy." The man just said, "We'll see." The moral of the story: you don't know right now what is a blessing and what is a curse. For me, the bad years, the horrible situations have given me the courage and strength to make up what I have right now. And this drives me. So there you go. This is kind of the idea of what we're trying to do with the Major Arcana. You're trying to like get it down to like a little story or something. You could tell somebody, about the aspects of life and the rules of life and the things you encounter in life. Okay, so let me see if anybody's singing. Nobody's saying anything. Everybody's super quiet today. Super quiet. Okay. Next card is the Judgment card. So this is a fun card. I call this the coming out card, the coming out of the closet card. So for those of you who are not American, like we have a phrase called coming out of the closet. So it's used to refer to people that are homosexual, and when they finally come out like publicly about it, because in our culture, not as much anymore, but it still does exist. It's kind of like something you don't really talk about. Like, you do find more people who are just like, "Hey, I'm gay," and hey, but definitely in the past, it was like you didn't talk about it. It's like, don't ask, don't tell. So that meant you were in the closet. So when you came out of the closet, that's like you're like publicly like, "Hey, I'm gay. Just wanted y'all to know." Okay. So I call the Judgment card the coming out card. So not necessarily that you're coming out of the closet as a homosexual or whatever. It's just that you're hearing a call. You're hearing a call from life, from spirit, from whatever, and you're like, "Oh, I totally, I have to do that. I have to do that." And I put on here, this is what comes after death. When you have the breakdown of death, this is what comes next. Is judgment is really, it's kind of a resurrection, really. I don't know why, once again, it's like, this is those Christian themes that I don't fully understand, called judgment, which we don't like. We don't like that word. We don't like the word. Nobody likes that. Nobody wants to be judged. Nobody wants judgment. And then, like I said, in the actual Rider-Waite card, you have like people coming up out of the ground, and you're like, what is this, zombies? But it's the resurrection after death. It's when you rebirth into something new, there's a complete paradigm shift, and you're the new you, and you're like pursuing this thing, whatever it is. It's like, I am now going to be an honest person, and I'm not gonna shove all these things down that I really need to tell people. I'm just going to go ahead and tell them when they need to be told. Like, I'm not going to just let it eat away at me anymore. Or, you know what I mean? You're going to be more of your true shining self, from now on. So it could be something like, "Hey, I'm quitting my job and I'm doing this," or whatever. It could be something super dramatic, or it might not be as dramatic. It might be something like what I said, where you're like, "You know what? I just need to be more honest with people and not just eat the the anger and the frustration or whatever. I just need to be honest with people and go, look, you can't do that. I can't deal with that, whatever. So that's kind of how I see the Judgment card. Then we have the World. Okay, so once again, we have some Christian symbolism on most of the other cards, not on the card that I have depicted. But it's like we have the fixed cross, which comes from astrology. So it's all the fixed signs. So it's Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius are the fixed signs. And so they kind of translates in Christianity to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So you will see the cross on the World, like the fixed cross. You'll see it'll have the bull and the lion, and Aquarius is usually an angel, and then Scorpio is an eagle. You'll see that on the cards. So that's just talking about the world, the material world that we live in. So what the World card about is there's some phrase, and I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's something like wearing the world as a cloak about your shoulders, which means it's like you're in the world but not of the world. So it's kind of like that concept. It's like, okay, like I'm in the world and there's stuff I don't like, but I can live here, So it's like you accept yourself and others, because part of the world too is being able to accept the flaws in yourself as well as the flaws in other people. So that's kind of like what the World card is. It's like this is the last card of the deck. And so this is where we bring it all together. And it's like everything, you know what I mean? It's like everything that you've experienced and whatever seen, been, done, whatever, it's like you're able to just accept it, you know what I mean? And just dance in the world, on the fixed cross, if you will, or however you want to think about it. I put that picture of the whirling dervishes, that's a spiritual practice for them. They spin so they can experience the divine, or I'm not exactly sure why they do it, but it's, it's kind of like, that's how I think about it. It's like they kind of feel the world and feel the divinity all at the same time. So that's what I had there. I mean, there's more cards. I have a little bit more time to go through. So does anybody want me to cover any cards that I have not covered? Because there's plenty more. I don't know how many I did. I think I did about 5. So there's lots more. Anybody? Hello? Anybody? I think I'll stop sharing my screen here. Stop screen sharing. There we go. I'm back. Hello. So what questions? Anybody questions? I can do more cards. I've got my guy in deck. I can just go through, get a Major Arcana card. Okay. I just pulled Strength. So we can talk about Strength. So, Strength is about an inner power. And this is one of the cards where it always shows a female on it. So it's kind of like taming the beast within. It's using the inner strength, using the strength of control over yourself as opposed to control over the outer world. So like a control out of the outer world card would be more like the Chariot. So let me see if I can find the Chariot in this one, which in this one, I'll tell you right now, is the Canoe, because she changed a lot of stuff. But I like how it was changed. Let me see. I'm looking. Oh, here it is. So here, this is the Chariot, which is in here, the Canoe. So you know, like I said, this is about strength and inner strength over yourself, your emotions, your desires, you know, working with that. This is more, this is kind of like a just do it type card. This is like focus on your goal and get after it. So it's like kind of, we have like the male and the female, like this, I'm actively out in the world and I'm headed straight toward my goal. And on this, once again, this is not a traditional card, but there's two horses, like a black and a white horse on the chariot. So that has that kind of idea of like balancing and controlling, like, you know, opposite desires or whatever. So kind of like the same as this, but it's, you know, it's a little different because you're moving actively throughout the world. Okay, Julia says, I don't know enough to ask questions. Just keep going. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. Let's see what else we have for Major Arcanas that come up. Major Arcana. Okay, so far I'm not getting one. Here, the wheel, we talked about that. But I can just show you this one. See, so this is like a very cycles and seasons associated wheel. We have got the Empress, which in this deck is called the Gardener. So I don't know, maybe this isn't the best deck for me to be using because I might be confusing people. We've got the Empress. So this is about, you know, creative feminine energy. So we have like the High Priestess, which is the receptive feminine energy, where it's just like we're taking things in and we're receiving and we're reflecting and we're working with our inner knowing and all this kind of stuff. And then we have the Empress, which is like the creative feminine energy, because it's like we can give birth to children. So this is like the spring and summertime card. This is creative growth. This is, you know what I mean? And in a feminine way, and like the earth is growing. You know, you can see all the trees and the flowers and the plants and the fruit and everything around her. And it's, you know, it's kind of a sign of abundance, like this female abundance and creativity is. And so like a lot of times if people are asking if they're going to get pregnant or something, like if this card comes up, that's a pretty good sign, you know, because she's pregnant. All right. Oh, we've got the Star. We didn't talk about the Star. This is a great card, the Star. So, you know, this is like this constant renewal of yourself and your energy. And it's like, it also has to do with like your inner compass that guides you. Like it's like your North Star, right? You're guided by your North Star, or the sailors used to navigate by the stars. It's like, this is how you find your direction, you know. And the star is always, it's just another depiction with water, you know, where they're either pouring water out or they're gathering water up or they're in the water. So it's like this constant renewal and refreshment and stuff. And it's like hopes and dreams and wishes, you know what I mean? And following your North Star toward what your destiny is, in a way, and like following your hopes and dreams. We did talk about the Fool some. So this is like, you know, when you see this card, it's like, okay, this person, this is like a brand new chapter in life. You know, if you like the Fool card comes up, it's like, okay, like we're starting a big heading here. This is not like a little chapter. This is like a unit. This is a brand new unit, and everything's new, and we're going to go off and see what we can see, but we haven't experienced these things before. So we kind of have to go into it, with childlike innocence, because if we bring everything from before, then it's not going to be new, right? Okay. Okay. We have the Moon. This is the Moon card in this deck. So yes, the Moon can be about cycles also, because the Moon has cycles. The Moon can be about things that happen in the dark. at night, hidden. I also think the moon is also a lot about like your ancestry. Like it can be like family lineages and ancestry that goes way back. The moon can be about things that scare you, because like once again, it's this idea of nighttime. Like the night is scary, so it's like subconscious fears or just things that scare you, that things that you're freaked out about. That can be the moon. It could be about magic. It could be about feminine magic. Just and so like I say, that might not be really like a thing that you're into or whatever, but it might be a thing that you're really into. So you're going to develop your own associations, and you're going to know like, oh, when I see this card, like, yeah, there's something really secret going on in the dark, or whatever, or whatever it is, whatever it might be for you. But just like kind of play with it. Like I said, just like kind of look at it and go, oh, okay, the moon is like going through phases, and this person and the owls come out at night, and the scary wolves are howling. Like, what does that kind of bring up? What could that be about? All right, moving on. We've got in this deck, this is the Tower, this is lightning. So this is, like I said, this is a destructive force, things falling apart. It's like sometimes like stuff just can't go on anymore, and it falls apart. It's destroyed. And sometimes you hear what the definitions about. It's about like being too prideful or something like that. But it's just basically like a destructive force. Destructive force when you see the Tower. What else do we have for Major Arcana? Looking. Let me see. Still looking. Oh wait. So like this is her rendition of the Magician. Kind of cool. This is the Gaian. If I did not make that clear, this is the Gaian tarot. This is the Hierophant or the Pope. So you can see on the, some of them are markedly different. This is Temperance. There we go. She's still an angel in this one. This is Judgment, and she calls it Awakening. So maybe not quite as scary as some of the other ones. This is her Death card, which is very not scary. It's just a boat that's kind of falling apart and getting grown over. Here's the Emperor. So the Emperor is about it's about leadership and establishing boundaries and building foundations. So you can see this guy's like kind of working on a column of a house. So it's like, it's the four. So it's like the four walls. It's like I said, what defines the boundaries? Like this is what I'm building, and these are the four corners, and this is what I'm building it on. So it can be about foundations and how you're putting them down. And then, like I said, it can be about leadership, because you might be leading other people in this project. We've got the Lovers. So here, this is my example of how, like I said, the older version of the Lovers, kind of more like a Garden of Eden thing. The modern ones are more like, yeah, this is a lovers thing. This is definitely two people. This is a couple. This is the Lovers. The Lovers, to me, really more than relationships, more than a relation, because I may use like pip cards for relationships to like see that there's a relationship or whatever, more than this card. And then that's what I'm saying. Like somebody else, that might not be the case, but for me it is. So for me, the Lovers is more about like choices. It's about choices. So it's like, am I going to go this way? Am I going to go that way? It's kind of a crossroads kind of thing. Like, am I going to commit to this, or am I not going to commit to this? To me, that's what the Lovers is. And I think that's probably a little bit of a deviation than it would be for other people. But like if this comes up for you and like this means like relationships, then cool. It's to you, it's the relationship card. To me, it's not. What else we got here? I don't know if we got them all. Or I'm in my head. I don't know. This is the World card in the Gaian, so that it does not have the cross on it. I'll bring up some other ones. Oh, the sun. We haven't talked about the sun. The sun is so awesome. So the sun is the sun. Everybody loves the sun, right? It illuminates things. It makes things brighter. People are happy when the sun's out, happy on a summer's day. This is like, it's just like everything's going great. Everything's illuminated. Everything's positive. Everything's moving forward. The sun it's a good, positivity, uplifting kind of card. There's the sun. Okay. Oh, let me High Priestess. High Priestess. So this is where I was saying, this is like the receptive female energy. So this is reflective and receptive, and it's, inner knowing, and it's like knowledge in the quiet. I don't know how to just describe it. But that's this is, what I mean? This is the High Priestess. So it's like if the magician was the high priest, so to speak, and then we had the High Priestess. It's like, the magician is more active and out in town doing tricks and doing the shell game and all, what I mean, and all this stuff. And the High Priestess is usually kind of like a cloistered person, and it's like you only approach her when there's a serious matter. You know what I mean? She's not, traditionally you don't think of the High Priestess as like out walking the streets, going, hey, like, what can I do for you? You know what I mean? It's just kind of a quiet inward energy, reflecting on things, and like knowing the secrets, and learning the secrets, and learning the teachings, and all, all that kind of stuff. We have got the Hermit. The Hermit. So this is a wisdom card, right? So this is like the Hermit has like studied and learned. This guy kind of almost looks a little bit like maybe he's a monk. Maybe he's some kind of spiritual, like, like a warlock kind of thing, but whatever. He has knowledge, and he has wisdom. And traditionally these people were set apart to study and be alone, and learn the truths and all that kind of stuff. But that it's about wisdom, and what's the truth here, and how can I become more wise, and learn the truths and study the secrets, and all that kind of stuff. That is the Hermit. All right, what time is it? It's 5. So let me just real quick. I just kind of wanted to go through this is the deck I have in front of me. I've got the Aquarian. So just by contrast, some of the more traditional cards, although his are weird too. Like here's his Temperance. So you can kind of tell that person is an angel, but usually they're like standing in water, but not in this one. So that's really not a great example. But I'm just going to go through. Oh, yeah, see, and his are weird. See, like this is his star, and this is a peacock. But there is a star on there. Once again, not really. Oh, and the world is weird. Let me get a different one. Let me get one that's closer to the Rider-Waite that people know. Let me get the new Palladini. That one will hopefully work better. It was in the slideshow anyway. Let me see. Going through. Where's the Major Arcana when you need one? Wow, look at this. I'm going on all these and not one yet. Oh, I bet I had them out. That's why. Like, why are they? I had them. So okay, all right. So the Fool we've already talked about. Yeah, the Tower is a burning tower, destruction. Here, this is the Wheel of Fortune. So this is like both seasonal in that we have the seasonal part here. And then we kind of get this feeling of the up and down with the snake right there. Death, like I said, scary. He's the horseman of the apocalypse or whatever. There's somewhere they're like stepping on skeletons and everything else with the death card. Justice, like I said, this one actually looks like a guy, but it's usually a woman. Here's the Lovers. So this one has a little more of that Garden of Eden theme to it. Here's the World. So this is the cross that I'm talking about, but his just has birds. So it doesn't have that, like I was talking about with the bull and the lion and the eagle and the man. It's not on there. Here's the Star. She's in the water. She's scooping water. She's renewing herself in the water. Here we have the Moon, where it's kind of a spooky landscape. We have the Sun, like, yay, it's the Sun. High Priestess. So you usually see these towers here. So it's like kind of seeing this is the scrolls of knowledge. Strength, it's always like a lady and a lion. Did we talk about Hangman? We didn't talk about Hangman. We have to talk about Hangman. Okay. So Hangman is when you're in a place where you can't do anything and you're stuck and you're just hanging suspended. So this can be about like you need to have faith that you're going, you know what I mean? What you need is going to be revealed to you, or you're going to get what you need to get unstuck. It can be about like looking at things from a different perspective, because if you've ever hung upside down like this, everything looks weird because you're upside down. So it's like maybe you need to change your perspective on things. But it's just basically about learning to just be okay with where you're at. And it's like if where you're at requires like doing nothing, or waiting to see what happens, or just keep doing what you're doing and just wait for the guidance, then that's what you need to do with the Hangman. I wonder what is the Hangman in this one? That's weird. We missed it somehow. We've got the Hermit. He always has his little lamp, his little guiding light of wisdom. We've got the Emperor. We've got the Chariot. See, there's the Chariot, but he doesn't have, they don't show the horses on this one. We've got the Hierophant, where this guy looks more like a pope. We can recognize him. The Magician, he always has the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water, or wands, cups, swords, and pentacles, because he can create anything he wants out of the universe with his will. We have the Empress. There she is. You can't really tell she's pregnant on this one. We have the Devil. So that's the scary card that nobody likes the Devil. But what the Devil is about is, you can see this little chain here. He can just take this chain off his finger. Usually it's other people that are chained to the Devil, and it's like the same thing, like they could just take their chains off at any time. So the Devil is about like how you are chained through your beliefs and your attitudes to things that you could be free from. So I call it the I can't because card. So when I see this, I'm like, people are like, I can't because. That's the Devil. Here's Judgment. So we have the Angel with the trumpet, but there's no zombie people. And then Temperance with the mixing. So that's that. So if nobody has any questions, then I will wrap it up. And and go on to next week. So next week, we're going to talk about spreads. So we have, in the past, we've talked a little bit about card combining here and there, but it's really going to come into play more when we get to the spreads next week. So we're going to do spreads. And then I think I'm going to take July off from the live broadcast and just post some more regular videos. And I'm working on a workbook. So I want to get the workbook done because this workbook's I've been working on it forever. Like if you saw the very first broadcast, I was talking about the whole point of me doing these lives is so I can run it by you guys and like finish this workbook. So that's for July. So it's not like I'm going away. I just won't do any lives. I'll do other kind of videos, work on the workbook, and then I'll start them back up in August. So if you have any questions between now and the next class, which will be the 30th, yes, the 30th of June, let me know. Put them in the comments. You can email me, dancingtarot@gmail.com, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.